This may look like a lake, but it's not. This is 300 acres of farmland that floods every year, and for 1,200 farmers along 84 miles of the River Suck, flooding is a fact of life.
About a third of my farm is affected by flooding, and you know, once it's flooded, once a flood comes in, and it comes in the summertime, well, it's 6 weeks to 2 months before cattle will graze on it.
Well, it's, you can say, useless from September on until maybe the following May, if you're lucky. So you have only a few months. Basically, it works out from roughly about 3 months, if you're lucky.
How can I say to my son, you know, there's a good living here for you, when really there isn't? I mean, that's something that I don't know how to cope with, in the sense, flooding is a terrible problem for me, a terrible problem for everybody in the area.
Last summer now, in the month of June, that we had such a terrible flood, was that I had to sell my cattle at that stage, so I lost all my headages and all that on them, you see.
My land in the farmyard is only a few hundred yards across, and I have to go around the road the 5 mile every day with the flooding. And also the road as we came in, it floods as well.
The River Suck is a tributary of the Shannon, which flows through counties Roscommon and Galway. Along its 84 meandering miles are thousands of acres of farmland, which flood every year from October to March. Last year, the wet weather caused additional flooding in the summer, further restricting the farming potential of the area.
I have 75 acres of land. Presently I have 50 acres of water and 25 acres of land or thereabouts. It leaves me very tied up. I had to build a house for sheep for the winter, because even the acres of land that are not flooded are extremely wet. So you can't really out winter stock on them.
What about trying to save fodder every year? That must be getting increasingly difficult.
It is. Last summer now I had to close fields to take 2 cuts of silage off them. Actually I took 3 cuts off one piece. It meant that I had no aftergrass whatsoever to feed cattle on in the autumn. I had to start feeding silage in October. I thought I'd have plenty of silage, and I'm afraid now it's going to run out before the winter's over at all. I reckon I'll have to buy silage later on.
Does that mean you're going to be out of pocket again this year?
Well, I'm out of pocket every year from it. One more year as bad as last year, I think we'll have to think seriously about changing.
Changing to what, John?
I don't know. You can't live or you can't feed cattle on floodwaters and vague promises or vague promises ahead.
Classification of the Suck Basin as an extremely disadvantaged or severely handicapped area would provide additional assistance to farmers and help stem the drain of people from the area.
The population in the whole region here is dropping about 1% per year. In 20 years' time, the population will be down by another 20%. And the less of the population, the less attractive it is here to maintain services in rural Ireland. This is really a shout of stop. We need, in the west of Ireland, in Connacht Ulster, in this region, additional support to maintain the farm families. Otherwise you're going to have massive migration and immigration continuing, hemorrhaging here from this area.
I'd like to see the area being declared extremely disadvantaged, which it is, because areas that have been, the first areas that were declared disadvantaged were mountain areas. Now, mountain areas, they're there all the time. They're never covered with water. At least they're there. They can be planted. You can't plant this land because trees just won't grow on it. It has no alternative use whatsoever other than grazing it.
But surely you can't even graze it anymore.
Well, we can't even graze it anymore. As a man made a comment there lately, if we knew how to grow rice, we'd be the best rice growing country in the world. This area would anyhow. But I don't think that's a viable proposition.
Is it realistic or fair to encourage or to expect people to remain under conditions like this?
Well, let's be honest, there's a lot of attractions here living in this region from the point of view of the culture and the historical side of it, and indeed family life and all the facilities that we have in a sense. There is a positive side to it. But to maintain the numbers here and to maintain our schools and our churches and our a Garda station, everything else. You must have numbers, and we must maintain the population we have, and if possible increase that. It's a difficult challenge. It's the greatest challenge facing Ireland today, and it's the greatest challenge facing the European Union.
With a huge number of farmers involved and thousands of acres underwater every year, one solution might be drainage. But in the case of the Shannon Basin, drainage is just not on.
There are two things that are required for a good runoff in a river. One is an adequate channel, a good deep channel, so that floodwaters can rise in that channel without flooding the surrounding land. And the other is a good velocity of flow. The faster it runs off, the quicker you'll get rid of the water. But it is generally estimated now that to make any effect at all, you're talking about 250, 300 million, that sort of order of money to make a good channel there. And just the return on the land would not justify that sort of cost.
Over the years, maybe some people pointed a finger at the ESB and at Ardnacrusha, saying that the backup of water was maybe causing flooding further upriver. Is that the truth?
Outside of Lough Derg, once you're to the north of Lough Derg, there is no effect of the Shannon scheme. And so that the major area of flooding between Athlone and Banagher area, the Ardnacrusha could run flat out, or it could stop running altogether and you wouldn't have any effect.
While limited in its agricultural potential, the area is very significant in environmental terms, according to David Hickey of An Taisce.
In terms of its environmental importance, this would be one of the most important areas in Europe because there are so few river basins that have been substantially unmodified. Now, the River Suck has been substantially unmodified, and its naturalness is part of its attractiveness.
And what kind of wildfowl is it attracting?
There are a number of species. The most important are the wild swans, the Buick's and Pupa swans, which come down from the far north in wintertime to escape the severe cold. And for them, feeding areas are very important indeed. Also the Greenland white-fronted goose, which again comes down from Greenland and Iceland, and golden plover as well.
This whole question of draining the Shannon is not on, and let's be quite clear about it. When the European Union is paying farmers now to put land aside, set aside land, I think all we can do is talk about maintenance of the River Shannon, maintenance of the River Suck. But this type of flooding that we have here in the background is going to continue on indefinitely. Farming in this area is under major threat and under major challenge. But even when we achieve, and I'm quite confident that we will achieve extremely severely handicapped status for this particular area, and I'm quite confident we'll get environmentally sensitive areas. But that to me is not enough. I think the government would have to bring in the leader type programme for the basement, the catchment area of the River Suck and the River Shannon, to allow off-farm income, to encourage farmers to invest in tourism projects and young people to have other type of environmentally sensitive projects that would be beneficial and create jobs.
Thank you.